My name's Adam, and this is my imported 1997 Mazda RX-7 Type RS Special Edition. And in this video, I thought I'd go through all of the recent mods I've done to it in the past 4 to 6 months-ish, mostly cosmetic and functional, including air suspension, full BRAUM seats and racing harness, a steering wheel from MOMO, and a shift knob. And there's a lot of custom stuff going on with some of these mods. So I thought I'd just take 20 to 30 minutes to kind of go through what's going on here. The first thing I did was the steering wheel. When I imported this car from Japan, it came almost completely stock, super low miles, 17,000 original miles, almost completely mint interior. I mean, really just nearly flawless condition inside and out. And it's got a rare Mazda Speed body kit on it. It's an A-spec front bumper, rear wing, side skirts, along with what I think is a B-spec carbon fiber hood. And it's just gorgeous. And I knew the first thing I wanted to do was start making moves toward the vision I have for this car, which is sort of a vintage, rustic, retro look to the interior, which I was going to keep mostly black, but spice things up with the wooden steering wheel from MOMO, which is this MOMO Heritage Mod 07 wheel. The car from Japan came with a Mod 07 wheel. It was one of the only modifications done to the interior, and I decided that I really liked the wheel, but I think I really like this wooden one in terms of matching the vibe and aesthetic that I'm going for. So that was one of the first things that I picked up, the Mod 07 Heritage Edition, which is their limited edition kind of throwback retro styling, which I loved. It's kind of this like slicked wood, almost like maybe cherry wood. I'm not a friggin' wood crafter, but that's kind of fitting the vibe there. I also picked up at the very same time the MOMO Heritage shift knob, which you can already see installed on the car, which is a wooden shift knob, more of like a maple and cherry wood mix, and it looks awesome. Both of these things, which this is something that really attracted me to the car, both of these things have a leather insert with the MOMO name, so where the shift pattern would be, it's leather, and where the horn would be, it's leather. I am a leather crafter by trade. I have my own leather business called 80 Proof Goods, so these little pieces of leather tie-ins were really attractive to me just because it spoke to me on a personal level and it spoke to sort of my passions, and that sparked the idea of kind of taking that and running with it. Once I had the MOMO wheel and shift knob in place, the vision started to come together. I had my eyes on a set of BRAUM British Tan racing seats and a black harness to match. But air suspension was coming first, and that's going to lead us into this next couple of minutes for the video. I had an idea for the air tank and the air suspension system in the trunk. Because I'm a leather crafter, I wanted to make a custom leather duffel bag in this beautiful full-grain Italian leather to house the air tank. I bought a 4-gallon smoothie tank, which puts the ports on either end, which is great, so that the face of the tank would be able to just be leather, and I wouldn't have to poke holes in the face, and it can actually look like a duffel bag. Now, being a leather crafter, I have all the tools to get this done necessarily myself, and I did it, I did a real proper job. I built it like I would build a customer's duffel bag. So I spent a lot of time doing all of the things I would do on the leathercraft side of things, including stitching, skiving to make the edges thinner. I installed antique brass hardware for the zippers. I have the gussets on the side have holes punched out for the 3/8 and 1/4 inch ports for the smoothie tank. So I really went all out when it came to the trunk setup. Now, in order for the trunk setup to work, I needed a false floor to really accentuate my idea. The idea being that the leather duffel bag that you're seeing me make here, housing the air tank, would sit on a false floor along with the management system, which is Airlift suspension. The Airlift Performance management kit, I got the 3P and 3H, so that manifold has a removable plate, and I made an 80 Proof Garage plate, or 80 Proof Goods rather, plate for that, which I thought was awesome. Made out of the exact same leather, and that going on the false floor would allow me to run bulkheads into the false floor with the lines kind of being hidden. If you're not familiar with bulkheads, basically they're just fittings that sit in the false floor, so where the lines go, basically looks like the air lines are going into the floor, when really they go into this piece of wood and come out underneath, kind of tucked and hidden. So I have a laser engraver and a laser cutter, so that'll help me with the ends of the duffel bag, and I worked really hard on this. I made basically 2 variations. The first one was a little bit too loose. I had to cut up a couple of pieces on the ends. I didn't film that to get it to fit properly around the air tank, but once it did, I knew that this vision was really going to come to fruition. And the goal for this whole car is not to make this isn't supposed to be some SEMA car, right? Like, I'm just a guy in a garage with a passion. I love RX-7s. Finally got my hands on one that was super low miles and a beautiful with the Mazda speed kit, but I wanted to make it my own, and I just didn't want to go the route that I see a lot of people go. including, you know, picking up an airlift kit or an AccuAir kit and doing the same things, doing the same Recaro seats. I just wasn't interested in doing the same thing. And that's not a knock to anybody who does. I just wanted to go a little bit of a different route, put my own spin on things, and it was kind of sourcing all of these items based on the idea that I have this leathercraft background. So once the false floor was built, which I wrapped in a black leather and obviously mounted the tank to it, which is that waxy natural leather from Italy, that waxy leather beautifully matches everything that you're going to see in this video. Once I had that taken care of, I knew it was time to tear apart the car, and that included building the plywood bottom and top for the false floor, which you'll see me do here. And I already rambled about all this, so I'm kind of going to skip forward. Now, when it came to actually routing into the car, the RX-7 made it really, really easy to actually go about routing the airlines, routing the harness itself. The RX-7 being a very small car, the FD in particular being such a small car, the rear seats come out really easily. The hatch has that kind of, what would you kind of call it? Maybe the partition, so to speak, that kind of drops down. Makes it really easy to run things. Inside the door sills, there was a really easy way for me to pop open small little plastic casings that run the factory OEM harness. So I was able to tuck airlines in there. All of that ironed out super, super easily. Now, I talked about the management system, and the management system is what you're seeing me build here. That is the Airlift Performance, the Airlift 3P3H system. I also picked up, for the actual struts, I picked up Maxload suspension air struts, and that was something I did. It cut costs a little bit, but I did my research, and again, trying to be a little bit different. Everybody's kind of running the same systems, mostly the same systems. Maxload is basically the private label brand that a lot of known brands use, and instead of using all of their brand names that you have to upcharge for, I went with the Maxloads that were a little bit more affordable. Finishing up kind of this trunk setup, X-Mat from Eastwood. I live really close to Eastwood in Pennsylvania, so I was able to just drive over there, pick up this X-Mat to minimize some of the compressor sounds. The compressor is going to be mounted underneath this board, and that's going to help minimize sound inside the car because compressors can be loud, but it's also mostly for the aesthetic. I just don't like the look of the compressors. I did get a chrome one. Even if I got a black one, I still think I wanted to hide it. I just didn't want to add just extra pieces to the visuals of the trunk. So tucking that under the false floor was great. It did take some trial and error though, because I needed a little bit of extra height on the false floor in order to get the compressor to mount properly without touching the bottom. So either way, it was done. Not terrible. Assembling the harness, super easy for the system. Airlift Performance makes it super simple with their instructions. You got harnesses that go to all four corners. You have, especially if you go with the 3P system and 3H system that measures height as well, the height sensors go to all four corners of the car, kind of the same way that your airlines would. And the master harness goes straight into the manifold in the trunk, so I routed that up underneath of the false floor. All in all, super simple. The fuse boxes for the FD are basically on the driver's side, which in my imported case is the right side of the vehicle. So it's a right-hand drive car. The fuse box is on the right-hand side. So I just ran things right over there super, super easily. One of the things that I really enjoyed doing about this car was tucking everything. Like I said, running it in the door sills was great. Popping off the center console was super, super easy as well. And then you can just kind of route things that way. I did end up picking up previously a phone holder from JP3 Performance, which I ended up not using because the magnet on the phone holder didn't let me use my wireless charger next to my bed. So I ended up using that phone holder for the 3P3H controller from Airlift. So that's going to look really cool. You'll see that in just a little bit. Here you can see me removing my Takata harnesses. I actually don't even use these as seatbelts. They're literally just there for the aesthetic. I bought headlight covers off of a gentleman on Facebook Marketplace, and he gave me these for free. So I was like, hey, what the heck? They look pretty good on the interior, at least up until the point of me getting new seats. So these Takatas, after seeing this video, I pulled them off and they don't actually get used again. I replaced them with black BRAUM ones. Here's that process of me pulling up some of the weather stripping in the doors, which was, again, just an easy process. Everything got tucked under the plastic, super nice and neat. It's something that I would highly recommend doing for anybody out there who lives in colder weather climates. If you're looking to bag your car and you live in cold weather, running the airlines underneath of the vehicle, like kind of at the subframe or the pinch welds, leaves your system susceptible to freezing more than you would be susceptible to freezing if you ran it inside the car. Now that should be obvious, but running it underneath the car might sound like the easier way. But if you just take a little bit of extra time, feed things like you see me doing here, feed them under the seats, make sure they're not going to get pinched anywhere, tuck them under the carpet, at the door sills, where, like, you know, you're not going to be stepping, where they're not going to get crushed. That's going to save headaches down the road in those colder climates, so you don't get any condensation that freezes up in the air lines. The last thing you want to do is go out to your car in the morning, try to start it, try to air up, and your lines are frozen. Not a good look. Kind of sucks. Really defeats the purpose of the air suspension system. Here I am popping off that center console, which I also have plans for. I think I'm going to do a matching shift boot and a matching kind of armrest cover in the same leather that I wrapped that air tank in the trunk with. That's neither here nor there. That's kind of a future problem, future issue, future task. But I ended up using these electrical fish sticks. I don't actually know what they're called. I think I'm just calling them fish sticks. Helped me really shove that straight through the carpeting. I was able to tape some of these lines to it and pull it all the way through, making it super simple. I think what I'm running here is parts of the harness that'll go to the controller, and I basically use the same route through the center console. For the left side, the front left wheel, I go through the center console and the passenger side. The front right wheel, I go through the center console on the right side, and then the rear of the car is actually a lot simpler because there's a whole grommet underneath the rear seats, and there's a hole, or like a trap door, so to speak, where the fuel is, the fuel tank is in the trunk. So lots of options for the FD. If you're looking to bag your FD, there's so many different ways that you can run these cables, the lines, everything can be done pretty properly. One thing I have not mentioned is that I did most of this work, specifically the air suspension work. I did everything myself. I did most of the air suspension work outside in December, late November, early December. It was ice freaking cold. And obviously in the winter, it gets super dark in Pennsylvania around 4 o'clock, 4:30. So I'm out there at like 5:30 p.m. in the pitch black. I picked up some Milwaukee work lights so I could see some things. So that's why some of this footage is in the dark. I'm using the Ray-Ban smart glasses to film a point of view video, the POV that you're seeing here. And again, a lot of that was done in the dark and the freezing cold. So all of the hard work has been done in terms of running the airlines, running the harness. I prepped everything in the car, the trunk setup, everything was prepped before I even touched the Maxload to the struts. I knew I wanted to get everything set up, so once I put the struts in, it was basically just plug and play at that point. So here are the front and rear air struts and shocks from Maxload. They look awesome. I was super nervous because it's not Airlift suspension, it's not AccuAir, it's not all the known brands out there, so I wasn't sure what the quality was going to feel like. You can read up on it all you want, but at least for me, until I experience it firsthand, I'm a little skeptical. But I got them in and I was super impressed. Really, really love the quality of these things. The bellows are super high quality. Everything feels like top notch. I was able to install all of the fittings that it came with. It came with 1/4 inch and 3/8 fittings. I'm running 1/4 inch lines, so I installed the 1/4 inch ones, but everything worked out great. I did learn my lesson here. It came with red Teflon, or red kind of like, I don't think it's Loctite, it's more like Teflon. I learned my lesson because once I installed these, there were air leaks in almost all 4 of the corners. So I had to pop off all of those fittings and put my own Teflon tape on there, and that fixed my issues, but I wish I knew that going into it. But overall, super impressed with the quality of everything it came with. The front struts came with braided steel lines, which is awesome because obviously the front wheels turn in and out of the wheel wells, and when they're rubbing, you don't want them rubbing on straight up airline. You'd rather them rub, if they are going to rub, you'd rather them rub on the braided stainless lines. Those fittings worked out great. I was able to install those no problem. They also came with adjustable dampening. If you're not familiar with how this works, not only do you get to adjust the airbag, but you also get to adjust 32-way adjustable dampening. So you can soften or harden just like you would a coilover. So there's lots of room to play with this. As a matter of fact, I actually have to go back and make some adjustments to the car. I have the struts in the rear are actually set too high physically. You can see me adjusting them here. They're physically adjusted too tall. So that means I have less air in the bag, making it a little bit less comfortable of a ride in the rear. So I have less air running in the bags in the rear to get the ride height that I want, which means that I can feel a little bit more of the road than I want to. So when I hit like a minor pothole, the car kind of smacks a little bit harder than I'd want. What I want to do is actually shorten the body of the strut or the shock in the rear and add more air to the bag and still achieve the same ride height, but it'll be more of a comfortable ride. Coming off the car from Japan are these Aragosta coils, which are beautiful coils. They're so cool. Really, really well-known brand, especially for the Japanese cars out there. Unfortunately, these coils, when they came off the car, I was able to see the sticker on it. They were installed in 2011. I don't even know if they're from 2011. I just know that they were installed on this car in 2011. So a 14-year-old coilover, potentially even older, they were not in the best condition. When I cooked them off, I did have to roll my rear fenders. I knew that going into it. The fronts I already rolled, so I had to roll the rears. Otherwise, my aggressive rotiform setup would not fit properly when I aired out. Speaking of which, the wheels I'm running on this car are Rotiform OZTs. I got them on Facebook Marketplace. They're a 3-piece forged wheel, staggered setup, 18 by 8.5 in the front, and here you can see it bagged. 18 by 8.5 in the front, 9.5 in the rear, so a little bit of a wider setup. The offset is a plus 35. Now, that is an aggressive offset for an FD. FDs typically run stock around plus 50. A lot of guys can get away, you like to get away with around plus 40, plus 42-ish, in that range for aftermarket wheels. So I knew going into this that my plus 35s are going to be more aggressive than most of the FDs that I see on the market that don't have a wide body kit. Because this came with a rare, super rare Mazda speed body kit, I knew I was not touching this body kit. I knew I was not going wider fenders. I wasn't doing feed fenders. I wasn't doing any of that nonsense. I wanted to keep it exactly how it is, but I love these wheels, so I made them work. I had to do a little bit of modification to the wheel wells. I cut slightly the side skirts at the front, so when the wheel turns, it doesn't scrape. And I had to do a little bit of camber in the front as well. I think it's about -3 degrees of camber in the front. Tucks out really, really nicely. Next mod, after the air suspension, right around Black Friday, I ordered these seats from BRAUM. Now, I've gotten some, since posting, some of my TikToks, my Instagrams, some people had, very few people, but of course those people are the loudest in the room, had some negative things to say about BRAUM. I could not find a single person to back up any claims about BRAUM's quality. There seems to be just some weird rumor that people regurgitate and talk about the quality of BRAUM's. I ordered these because this is what I wanted. I like the way that they look. I did my research on the company. They're a reputable brand. They might not be Corbeau or Recaro in terms of brand name recognition, but they make awesome products. I can vouch for that because I have their seats now. I had never had experience with them before, but once I got these seats in, they were incredibly impressive. They're a leatherette, so they're not real leather, but they're a leatherette, which is standard in the industry, just like factory like OEM vehicle manufacturers and aftermarket seat makers. They all use kind of a vinyl or a leatherette. They fit the color profile that I wanted. They're a British tan leatherette, which is exactly what I was going for. I was looking originally for brown, but once I picked the leather from my air tank, duffel bag, and the trunk, and the steering wheel and shift knob colors, I knew that this British tan would fit perfectly. So it's basically at that British tan front, black stitching, and the back of it is sort of like a carbon fiber looking material. It's not carbon fiber in terms of material, but it's got the look to it. So I really liked the way that looked. You can kind of see it there. I picked up planted seat brackets that were specifically welded and made for the FD, put them together with some sliders, and threw them in the car. Now, they do sit a little bit higher than the factory seats that my car came with. I did not get leather seats from the factory. I've got the Type RS cloth / leather seats. They're kind of a half and half. Once I put these new BRAUMs in, I sat a little bit higher up, which is taking some getting used to, but it's not a deal breaker for me at all. I did the passenger and driver side. They came as a pair for right around $900, which is an amazing price for a pair of seats. And the quality, again, like I said, it's impressive. Now, because these seats are such a bold color, the contrast on the interior I love, but it also meant I could not use my Takata racing harnesses that I had previously that I said I got off of Facebook Marketplace. That green plus the black plus the British tan was not going to be a good look. I knew that, so those came out. What I did not know going into this was that I was going to have to cut off the seatbelt bracket off of the new planted seat brackets. There's a little tab that comes up off of the seat bracket toward the center console on both sides that would rub up against the seats. Now, because the car is so small on the inside, I had to shuffle the seats in as close as I could to the center console, which meant that seatbelt retainer bracket that is welded onto the planted brackets had to come off. So I cut those off, which meant I no longer had access to or could use factory seatbelts. Now, I could definitely custom fab something up in the future, but that's a later problem. What you just saw there was some Japanese yen I found actually hiding under the seats from when I imported it. I never saw that. So once I took the seats out, I found some of those goodies, which is awesome. It's kind of a cool find. Feels like some kind of good luck charm. With that said, seats were in. The next project was seat belts. Now, because the factory seatbelts, like I said, were not going to work anymore, I decided to pick up matching BRAUM 4-point harnesses. The 4-point harnesses were a no-brainer. The 5 points were a little bit much. I do not need a race-certified harness. This was strictly just going to be for street use. I have no intention of tracking this car whatsoever. And yeah, so I got the 4-point harnesses in black, which I thought was the best match to the interior. I also picked up some black padded harness like shoulder protectors, just because my experience with the Takatas was a little bit uncomfortable at the neckline. So I picked up these padded options, and so far so good. I like the way that they feel, but it took some cleaning out of the car to get everything done. I still had some remnants of a mess left over from the air suspension build, and because it was so cold when I started that build, it was a little bit more difficult to clean up after myself when the job was done, but no excuses. I got it done when it came time to do the harnesses. The way these harnesses work is actually extremely simple. All of the seatbelt mounting bolts, when you're not using a harness bar or a roll cage, you use the seatbelt mounting bolts for the rear seats to the clip on the neck pieces, or the shoulder pieces, and the waist lap pieces bolt down to the floor. This is very standard. Bolting to the floor is super standard. There are obviously different ways to go about it with different cars for the shoulder straps. Where you see me bolting them right up right now is pretty much the only option you have for the FD when you're not running a harness bar. I understand that this is not ideal. I got a lot of feedback on this. I've done a lot of research on this at this point. Harness bar is going to be ideal. I'm sure I will do that in the near future, but as of now, I didn't have seatbelts to work with, and this was as safe as I could make it without getting anything crazy. The harness bar, I have to do more research on to see what fits with the FD without serious modification. But these eye bolts just replace the factory bolts that bolt down your seat belts. So I just replaced them with the eye bolts, and they come with a quick snap connector already sewed onto the 4-point harness from BRAUM, and I'm super happy with that. So here you go. My Mazda Speed A-Spec 1997 imported FD RX-7. I love the way that this is coming together. I've got the carbon fiber hood, the black exterior paint, the black wheels, and the beautiful pop of contrast on the interior with these front seats. And say what you will about BRAUM if you've heard any rumors. I haven't. These are fine. These are amazing quality. I love the way that they look. They fit pretty great. The brackets are great. The harness is good. Everything looks good. So let me know what you think.